Welcome to my fish room.
Not chopped up into little convenient flakes. They have to chew it off of whatever. Say you're feeding clown loaches, well, give them some zucchini. They eat everything except the rind. Just put a hole through it, tie a string on it, and that way you just pull the donut out later. And they just chew on it, and you can feed potatoes. And if you got constipated goldfish, what do you feed them? Peas. Peas. Just take regular canned or frozen peas, and you feed them to your goldfish, and it'll clear up their own constipation problem. That's good roughage. Yeah. Well, we get a lot of our fish food at the grocery store. Coconuts. That's another thing. A lot of energy in coconut meat. It's tied to a piece of wood, and it's great for plecos. Potatoes, very starchy, lots of nutrients in that. You also have to have certain things in for certain fish. If you have plecos in a tank, you must have wood in the tank. The reason is because wood contains a product called lignum, and lignum is essential to a pleco's diet. If they don't have it, over a period of time, they will not do well at all, and eventually they'll die. And you'll say, well, I don't know why my pleco died. Well, I didn't have any lignum. That could be coconut shell. It could be any wood material. Driftwood, coconut shell, probably even beef. Don't need ground up fiber. Okay. Once you get your freshwater feet under you, people like to move up to the next stage. Now, at one point in time, that was discus, because discus were considered really difficult. They don't live well with others. They need hotter water, usually about 82 to 84 degrees. They need it very soft, very acidic, stuff like that. And if you can provide those conditions, they will do great. But you don't want to put a goldfish in with that, because he doesn't like that hot water. So you got to match the fish, plus you got to make sure that the fish you're putting in there don't just get eaten by the other guy. Tank full of discus and cardinal tetras looks so good first couple of days. Then you notice you got no more cardinal tetras. Also medication. Certain fish can only handle a certain strength of medication, whereas this other fish was fine. So say you got a goldfish with parasites, you treat him full dose of copper, or malachite green, or whatever preparation you're using. But if you got a scaleless fish like a loach, you can't use it. Basically, you put a half dose in there, because if you put a full dose, they start to develop bacterial and fungal infections, because copper does suppress the immune response. So it apparently suppresses more in fish with scaleless than with fish with scales. So then when you get the discus done and everything like that, move up to saltwater. Now, saltwater in many respects is easier than freshwater. Okay? The biggest thing about saltwater fish is parasite control. You have a lot of your fish that are only wild caught. So far on the list, they have about 243 fish that have been successfully bred at least once. Some of them have only been bred once, okay, by one guy. There's, Swiss Guard Basslet. I can sell you one for $150 if I buy it wild caught. If I buy it tank raised, $700. But the one guy figured out how to do it, and he's the only guy, and he's in New York somewhere. And so until everybody's doing it, they keep the price up. Like those blood parrots, same thing. That's why they won't tell nobody how to do it, so that the only market for them is them. Okay? So of all the fish though, the majority of them are wild caught. So when they come in, they have parasites, they have diseases and stuff like that. So it's very important to quarantine saltwater fish. Freshwater, not so much, because most of them are captive bred. They're kept in clean facilities. Like, people with fish farms don't generally let anybody go in, because there is a chance of the possibility that you'll bring something. There's viruses that are actually aerosol. Like, they'll go through the air, and of course they go for the discus angelfish and the clown roaches. And every now and again, you will not be able to get an angelfish for love or money, because all the fish farms got infected because, you know, you get a little complacent and you're not keeping the buildings separate, and you may take a net out of the one building and use it in the other. Well, it's when you get complacent, that's when you get problems. You should always, always, always clean your nets between tanks, especially if you have a hospital tank and your main tank. Use the nets on the hospital tank there and the other nets on the main tanks. Don't mix them up. In salt water, you have everything. These here are copepods. Now, basically, they only get 200 to 275 microns. If you want to catch them, you need something like this, okay? This screen is so fine that if I pour water on there, it won't go through. I have to take my finger and just like the inside of the tent, you got to touch it and then the water will come through. But until you do that, it'll hold water. And once you strain them out, you can see them as a little smear on the white, but that's about it. You can't see them really running around your tank. But what these guys do is they're right at the bottom of the food chain. You got your fish. They eat a bit of fish food, and they digest a percentage of what they ate. It may only be 30–40%. Nobody digests 100% of what you eat, otherwise that'd be much larger. Thank you. Then you want to put as many parts of the food chain in the tank as you can. So you have your hermit crabs, they'll run around and they'll eat uneaten bits of food. You have starfish that are detritivores, because there's carnivorous starfish and there's detritivore starfish. You don't want to put the carnivorous ones because they'll eat all your snails. They'll eat your corals, they'll eat everything. They shove their stomach out. See, they don't actually swallow anything. They shove their stomach out, they envelop it, they digest it, and then they pull their stomach back in. Yeah, they're just doing that because they're bored. And that's one way to break the pellet down. See, when you're shooting it out and back and forth, it's like us trying to pull the food because it's too hot. So, basically, you have your food chain and you try to get as many parts into it as you can. All the way down to these guys. Now, these guys do something a little different. Most animals, they eat the food and then they poo out waste. These guys eat the food, they cover it with a coating of chitin. Chitin is an indigestible protein. And then they absorb the nutrients from that food through that chitin. And then that fecal pellet is put out all in a little package. It's taken out of the food chain. So that no longer contributes to excess nutrients in the tank. It's just little pellets that are like gravel. And when you clean the gravel, of course, it's washed out because they're little tiny. Because you can imagine an animal that's 250 microns, how big his poo is? It's small. And then in turn, these are food for your corals and fish that have small mouths that are able to see this. Like a grouper that's this big can't eat any of these. But a mandarin goby that's that big can. He's got a little tiny mouth and he goes all the time. Other things that you can have in your tank, live rotifers. There's 200,000 live rotifers in there. There's 200 copepods in here. But these are kept in the fridge, so they kind of go to sleep, but they still multiply. 0418, there will be 400,000 rotifers in here. They multiply in the fridge even. They don't have to be kept warm. If they're kept warm, they double about every 14 to 20 hours, depending on the temperature. So you can culture up rotifers really fast. Which is good, because when you're feeding baby clownfish, they need to eat thousands of rotifers. And you have to have enough rotifers in the tank that the density of the rotifers is 1.5 times the length of the body of the fish. You don't want him to have to swim any farther than that before he gets his next snack. It's all about getting ahead of the food curve. You want more calories going in than what you're using out. That's why you got to paint the sides black so the clownfish doesn't try to swim into the glass. What do you feed rotifers and copepods? Phytoplankton, algae. This is 2 to 4 microns. Yeah, you have to have a really, really powerful microscope to see one of these little things. Now, what we do is this is concentrated. You just keep it in the fridge, and for a tank this size, you're going to put a teaspoon to 2 teaspoons in a day. And then these and these multiply in the tank, and the rotifers eat the nuisance algae spores, they eat the algae that you put in, plus they eat bacteria.